Hare Krishna. Today, May 20th, 2016, is the appearance day of Lord Nrsimha Dev. And I'm going to begin by explaining the circumstances under which I took sannyas in 1972. Just doing something right here. Just give me one moment. In 1972, I was a grihastha. I was married to an excellent wife, an Angamanjari, to whom I'm eternally grateful for, among other things, allowing me to take sannyas, even though she was so young. I was temple president of ISKCON Houston and grihastha, and I went to Los Angeles to see Prabhupada, who was coming there. And one second, I'm going to stop that noise. Sorry for all that noise. I'm trying to figure out because actually I'm going to have to stop that noise. Anyway, so I was in Los Angeles and I asked Prabhupada to take sannyas. He agreed, and I took sannyas in 1972 on this day with three other godbrothers, Rupanuga, Balimardan, and Satsvarupa. So when Prabhupada came to the temple room for the morning program, the sannyas initiation was performed during the morning program, and rather than chant Jai Radha Madhava, which he normally did, Prabhupada would come in, we would have Guru Puja, which we did then, we had the Guru Puja, and then Prabhupada would, after the Prema Dhwani prayers, Prabhupada would chant the Jai Radha Madhava prayers, and we'd have a class. So that day, instead of chanting Radha Madhava, he chanted the song Bhaja Hure Mana. And I remember, that was in the old temple room in Los Angeles, not the present one, in the room which now they became a museum, faith museum. And as Prabhupada was chanting, it was so ecstatic, it was so spiritually powerful that I had the sensation that the whole building was somehow dancing to Prabhupada's voice, to his singing. It was just so powerful. And as Prabhupada sang the song, which was one of his favorite songs, he recorded several times, and the words that there's no happiness in this world, and one should not seek happiness in material affections and relations and opulences and so on and so forth. In my heart, I had the sort of a strong realization that Prabhupada was singing as a loving spiritual father, encouraging his children who were taking this momentous step of sannyas. And of course, we were very young then. I had the honor of taking sannyas several years before my brain was fully mature. As you know, the physiology of the brain, in young males, the brain doesn't actually mature until a certain age. So anyway, I knew I wanted to preach. I knew I wanted to give my life to Prabhupada's mission. And that's the emotion I had. That's the realization I had as Prabhupada was chanting Bhaja Hure Mana, that he was my loving spiritual father, encouraging me and supporting me in this momentous step. And then, of course, we did the Hridayananda das Goswami was there in L.A., and Prabhupada actually had him perform the fire sacrifice and even speak a few words. And at a certain point in the ceremony, we sat down for the fire sacrifice in front of Prabhupada, right in front of his Vyasasana, dressed in our, I guess all of us have been householders. Not Bali Mardhan, he was a brahmachari before that, but Rupanuga had been a householder, and Satrupa and myself. So we sat down in the dress of the ashram we were leaving, and then at a certain point we got up. In front of us there were these plates with our sannyas, our new sannyas dress, and so on. And so at a certain point we got up, and we walked out and changed and came back in with our dandas, and it was a very dramatic moment. And then actually not the dandas, we went up to Prabhupada. One by one, we went up to Prabhupada's Vyasasana and made our sannyas vow, and Prabhupada handed us the danda. So later that day, we went, Satrup and I, who were good friends, went up to Prabhupada's room, and he said to us that just as Lord Nrsimha Dev protected Prahlad Maharaj, he will also protect you, which is an invaluable blessing. My God, it's such an important and wonderful blessing. As Lord Nrsimha Dev protected Prahlad Maharaj, he will also protect you. Then I remember the next morning after the ceremony, we went for the walk with Prabhupada at Venice Beach. And I remember Vishnu Jana Swami was walking with us, and he asked Prabhupada whether sannyasis should carry deities. And Prabhupada said, no, Lord Chaitanya never traveled with deities. It's not necessary. Although now, of course, many sannyasis do, but that's what Prabhupada said. And I remember, I think Satsarupa had heard, because in those days there were all kinds of stories going around. There still are, of course, but in those days we could eliminate false stories by asking Prabhupada. Now it seems to be very difficult to eliminate these stories, but Satrup asked, I believe Satrup asked Prabhupada, he said he had heard, Satrup said he had heard that the danda is somehow a type of deity, and that we could offer our bhoga to the danda, which Prabhupada found amusing and explained that wasn't the case. And then he gave us one bit of advice. He said, keep the wheels turning. In other words, a rolling stone gathers no moss. In this case, moss means sort of unwanted attachments. And Prabhupada used to sometimes joke that he had inherited Narada Muni's curse to always have to be traveling. And he told us it's a way for a sannyasi to not become attached to power, because, to be honest here, we have seen that a sannyasi can, who has some kind of administrative responsibility and who lives in one place or has a base, can become attached to a power over other people. And so that's a danger for sannyas, becoming attached to power. Of course, as they say, soft water wears away the stone. So one who is always in the same place and always seeing the same beautiful women, may see a woman perhaps a little bit too much, and attachment forms. As we know, if you're always with a person and that person is not repulsive to you, the tendency will be to become attached. A certain kind of emotional dependence arises, or attachment. So there are these dangers for sannyas, and by traveling, of course, it's more difficult for attachments to really solidify, because you're just not there. Of course, now with social media, that's another interesting wrinkle on it. But or a sannyasi obviously should not become attached to having power over other people. Which brings me to a point that if one is, well, let's say someone is a sannyasi and or a guru and always receiving honor or respect or associating with people who believe everything you say, there's a real danger. There's a real danger of starting to believe that I really am a sannyasi. Of course, the duties which we take on in the sannyas order of life, or in the grihastha order, or brahmacharya order, vanaprastha, they're all equally serious. And we should, to the best of our ability, we have to carry out our duties. At the same time, as Lord Chaitanya clearly said, no one is actually a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. No one is a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, or shudra. And so, in a spiritual society, there's a real danger of identifying with that. Just like a man or woman may be attached to their spouse and forget that we're all simply eternal souls helping each other, but equally a sannyasi may identify with that high position, like the Bhagavatam says, sarvashrama namaskritam, that all the other ashrams, namely brahmachari, grihastha, and vanaprastha, bow to the sannyas ashram. Well, nowadays, at least we still get free lunch in those places. But there's equally danger for a sannyasi of identifying with that was ultimately a bodily situation and really believing I'm a sannyasi. I'm better than these other people. One may come to believe that everything I say is true because everyone around me thinks that everything I say is true, whether or not I've done my homework, whether or not I actually know what I'm talking about. So there can be this danger of someone who is a guru or sannyasi believing that I know everything, or whatever I say is true, even when speaking about things that I really don't know about. So when Prabhupada said, just as Lord Nrsimha protected Prahlad Maharaj, he will also protect you, that of course could be taken in, or should be taken in various ways. I certainly hope, as everybody hopes, to be physically protected. No one wants to be unprotected. And at the same time, we have to be protected from ourselves. We have to be protected from our own material desires. We may fall into the bodily concept of life. We may develop inappropriate attachments. Ultimately, in the higher sense, every attachment is inappropriate because we're pure souls. But even though we have some material attachments, Krishna has created a civilization, a culture, in which we can channel, or as Prabhupada said, dovetail those attachments into spiritual service, which purifies them. For example, someone gets married, and usually people get married because they want to get married. Nowadays, it's less common that people are coerced into marriage, and so naturally there's some attachment. To have a wife or husband and children and feel no attachment, that happens, but usually that happens when someone who has no attachment for their spouse usually is not in a good marriage. Or if they have no attachment for their children, then probably it's some kind of emotional problem in the parent. But in a good marriage, you could say in a proper marriage or a healthy marriage, and in a healthy person, there will be some attachment to spouse and children. And yet, because one is in a situation, namely grihastha ashram, which Krishna has created and authorized, so in the very act of doing those family duties, one becomes purified, makes spiritual advancement, and ultimately focuses all one's attachment on Krishna. The same thing is true with sannyas. A sannyas is given, most of the time, and in most places, a certain respect, a certain honor, and it would be silly to say that someone is in the material world, someone has a material body, and has absolutely no attachment to honor, has absolutely no attachment to being respected. I mean, obviously we're trying to make spiritual advancement, but still something must be there to some extent. So, and yet if one is a sannyasi and performing those duties, then in the very act of receiving honor and reciprocating with people, one gradually becomes purified. So, oh, one moment. You can come in. It's probably less painful if you just come in all at once. So being protected by Lord Nrsimha Dev. Krishna, of course, we know that Krishna protects us. We pray for Krishna's protection in that famous verse, Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Pahimam means take care of me, protect me. Rakshamam means also very explicitly to protect someone from danger. So Krishna protects us, but Krishna has appeared in one special form, which emphasizes and explicitly reveals that side of Krishna, that he loves and protects his devotees. Krishna protects everyone. Krishna loves everyone, but the devotees want Krishna's protection. Some people simply, as we know, well, we all know people that have difficulties, and we would like to help them, but we just can't because they will not let us help them. Everyone knows someone like that you just can't help because they won't let you help them. And so there's a lot of people that won't let or don't want God to help them. Krishna is so kind that he helps anyway, but still the devotees, because they depend on Krishna and they seek Krishna's shelter and protection, therefore obviously Krishna, by the principle, the universal principle of reciprocation, Krishna gives special attention to his devotees. So the story of Lord Nrsimha Dev is, of course, quite famous. Prahlad Maharaj was literally a born devotee. If someone is actually a devotee, a born devotee, then nothing can stop that devotion. So to show this, to bring out this principle, you're on the screen right now, to bring out this principle very explicitly, and to show how strong devotion can be, Krishna arranged that Prahlad was born in the family of really the greatest demon in the world, Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu is an interesting character. He was fully determined. I mean, as we know in general in the Shastra, we find that there's a simple equation that tapasya produces Shakti in some way, that austerity produces power, so that yogis perform austerities to get different kinds of powers, material or spiritual, and that when Indra wants to eliminate a competitor, a yogi that's becoming too powerful, he will send sort of these special operation, beautiful young ladies, special forces, who seduce a yogi. And when the yogi gives up austerity, the yogi also loses power. So this is not simply a magical idea. It's we find in the real world. For example, anyone who becomes a great athlete or a great scholar or a great anything, a great musician, has to perform a lot of austerity in the sense of practicing self-discipline. So the world is made in such a way that austerity does produce a certain power or ability. And Hiranyakashipu is probably, just in terms of austerity, tapo yoga, was probably the greatest yogi in the history of the universe, because he fasted and performed austerities till there was nothing left of his body but the bones. As they say, don't try this at home. You could hurt yourself. But he was just bones. I mean, how can you get more austere than that? and he kept his prana, his life air, circulating in those bones. So then, as we know, he got these supreme material blessings from Lord Brahma that he would control the universe. And very dedicated demon who could not literally stand even to hear the name of God. And in that family, Prahlad was born. In that, to the biggest demon in the universe. And yet Prahlad was a pure devotee. And eventually saved his father. Prabhupada, I remember he gave a class on Lord Nrsimha Dev in LA one time, and I was listening, and he said that just as Prahlad was born in the family of demons, said some of my disciples were also were born in families that were extremely unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Obviously not all the families, or not even most of the families, but Prabhupada did have these experiences. So here we are as conditioned souls, which means we really like certain things, we really don't like other things. We have, as Krishna calls it, raga, dvesha, attachment and aversion. And so the normal course of life for a conditioned soul is to pursue one's attachments and to avoid that to which one is averse. In other words, seek pleasure, avoid pain. That's the most natural thing in the world. If sometimes, for example, if someone touches something very hot that would burn them, the hand pulls itself, and the arm pulls the hand away even before you realize what has happened. And that's a very common thing where your hand will pull away, and then only afterwards you realize what the danger was. So we are literally neurologically wired. We're just wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Pleasure is habit forming, and pain we naturally pull away from it. And so in a sense, to go against conditioned nature and to put in a new set of a new concept of pleasure and pain, where pleasure means to please Krishna and pain means to displease Krishna, so that I align myself with Krishna's pleasure and displeasure. Let's say displeasure, Krishna has no pain, so that whatever my previous inclinations were, I now accept as pleasing what pleases Krishna, and I accept as displeasing what displeases Krishna. That really is what it means to, as we say, surrender to Krishna. In the beginning, of course, we practice that. For example, if you're learning a musical instrument, let's say like keyboard, then you know where your fingers are supposed to go, but they don't go there. If you think about it, we all use our hands all the time. And so our hands, our fingers, are just naturally inclined to move in certain ways. And when you learn a musical instrument, or even learn how to type, you're retraining your fingers so that or like if you learn a language. For example, in English, native English speakers tend to put accents on certain syllables. So in English, we don't really accent the first two syllables of a word. And therefore, when native English speakers try to speak Sanskrit, which can come out in very interesting ways, they have difficulty with words that accent the first two syllables, like Ramayana. And therefore, it's very common for non-Indian devotees to say Ramayan, because it's difficult to say Ramayana, to accent the first two syllables. So just as we have speech habits, we also have manual habits of how we move our fingers. And so therefore, when you play a musical instrument, in some ways you have to put your fingers in places where you normally wouldn't put them, or accent. And so you have to retrain your fingers. And in that way, our natural inclination is to please ourselves or please people to whom we're attached. If you fall in love with someone, or you're family or just people you're attached to, then also you extend your own sense of pleasure and displeasure to include them, so that the pleasure or displeasure of someone you really love becomes your own. Of course, on the material platform, our love is really has a huge dose of attachment in it, and so even in the act of pleasing the object of our attachment, at a deeper level, in terms of our deep psychology, often we're really pleasing ourselves. Often we're really pleasing ourselves, or trying to please ourselves, and trying to avoid displeasure. For example, by pleasing this person, they won't leave me, and so on. So, to actually give up one separate sense of pleasure and displeasure, and to truly accept Krishna's pleasure and displeasure as our own, is it's a real job. It's not that easy, and it takes time. So therefore, there's the process of sadhana bhakti, raganuga bhakti, which is often talked about nowadays in different ways. But the essence of raganuga bhakti, if you actually know what the Sanskrit words mean, is that one wants to do that. I want to please Krishna. I'm not merely doing it because I know it's in my rational self-interest, or because I'm showing off to other spiritual practitioners, or I want to avoid criticism, but I really want to do it. I really want to serve Krishna. I really want to glorify Krishna because I love Krishna. That's the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. Of course, there are different stages of love, but still, that's the stage. And so, Lord Nrsimha Dev, in protecting us, also will protect us from making terrible mistakes in our spiritual life. Ultimately, of course, we want to be protected from physical danger, from emotional distress. But of course, our physical and emotional suffering really comes from our inappropriate activities, and we get reactions to that. And so by protecting us from material consciousness, ultimately Lord Nrsimha Dev is protecting us from the original cause of all of our suffering, physical and mental. So today is Lord Nrsimha's appearance day. Nur, of course, in our just an abbreviation of Nara, which means man, Nara Hari or Nrsimha or Nrsimha, the man-lion avatar. And Krishna, of course, comes down as Lord Narahari to assure his devotees of his protection. Even Krishna in Vrindavan, protected the residents of Vrindavan from so many dangers, so many demons, forest fires, and there were so many threats and attacks and dangers, natural and asura caused. There were so many dangers, and the residents of Vrindavan instantly took shelter of Krishna. So I should also point out that to take shelter of Krishna, to beg Krishna for protection, is not to approach Krishna with material desires, necessarily. When Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajante mang, that 4 kinds of people approach me or worship me, and that includes Arto, the one who's suffering, Artarati, one who wants to get material benefits. For example, let's say I'm just not very happy in life for whatever reason. I'm just not very happy, and so I pray to Krishna, please make me happy. Although it's interesting, there's even a song by, I think it's Nrsimha Das Thakur to Lord Nityananda, that Nityananda, Premananda Sukhi, Avalokana Koro Ami Baraduki, that you are Nityananda, which of course that's the Lord, you are eternal bliss, and you are Premananda Sukhi, you are always enjoying the bliss of love, but I am very unhappy. Ami Baraduki. I am very unhappy, so please make me happy. Koro Sukhi. So Krishna says that he is approached by people who are arto. So what's the difference between this prayer that you are always happy, Lord, I'm unhappy, make me happy? What is the difference between that and one of the four categories of people that approach Krishna, as described in the Gita, where one approaches Krishna because one is unhappy, and that's not considered to be a purely spiritual desire. The difference is that the arta, the suffering person, identifies the cause of the suffering as material. In other words, because she doesn't love me, or he doesn't love me, or because I don't have enough money, or I didn't win the race, or I didn't get the promotion, or whatever. Because of some material cause, I'm unhappy, and therefore I'm approaching God. Whereas in the song by Nrsimha Das Thakur, a devotee clearly understands that I am unhappy because, and only because, I don't love Krishna. And therefore, saying to Lord Nityananda, Ami Varoduki Koro Sukhi, I'm very unhappy, make me happy. In other words, free me from material desires. So Narottam is not praying for material rewards, but the opposite. Please make me free from any desire for material things, and please help me to love Krishna, because that's the only happiness. In fact, Narottam identifies that the cause of Lord Nityananda's happiness is his own love. So that's the difference. Getting back to the residents of Vrindavan, they cried out to Krishna when there was a forest fire, or a demon, and so on. There are certain events in life which are so shocking to us, shocking to our nervous system. Prabhupada used to use the expression to shock the brain, that one spontaneously cries out to Krishna because it's just, there's nothing else that one can do. There's nothing else. It's not that no matter how horrible things go, no matter how shocked I am, I should take heroic measures and just not even cry out to Krishna. So when there was a forest fire, the residents of Vrindavan cried out to Krishna. When a demon came, this does not mean that they were engaged in karma mishra bhakti, devotion mixed with fruitive desires. In their normal lives, they had no material desires. They didn't pray for anything material. But in sort of emergency or critical moments, when it's just something happens which simply shocks you, and so it's just completely natural. It would be unnatural and almost perverse not to cry out to Krishna. So in Lord Nrsingadeva's appearance, he came to save his pure devotee and to really declare that he will save all of his sincere devotees. And we don't exploit that protection. We don't, like ask Krishna, make sure I make this green light or something, or, I'm engaged in some kind of, like in a wrestling match, please make sure I win the wrestling match. It's not that kind of banal, trivial thing. It's in issues which are so heavy that any normal devotee, even any great devotee, cannot help but cry out to Krishna, that Krishna is there, Krishna will be there. So that crying out to Krishna, begging for Krishna's protection in shocking or critical or overwhelming moments, that is completely compatible with pure devotional service. And that's why we sing that prayer, which I believe is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna, 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 Raksha Mam, Pahi Mam, take care of me, protect me. And of course, the first line of protection is to be protected from illusion, to be protected from sin, since that's the cause of all of our other sufferings. So today is Lord Nrsimha's appearance day, and of course, we all try to meditate on him throughout the day, devote ourselves, and use that protection, take advantage of that protection to lead a Krishna conscious life and to try to do significant service for Lord Nrsimha's pure devotees, Srila Prabhupada. So, I'm not going to go on too long today. I've been speaking now for about 36 minutes, and that's actually about the time of Prabhupada's normal classes, not including the chanting of mantras and Radha Madhava and so on. So, thank you all very much. As I mentioned, it's also the day I took sannyas. I'm very grateful that Krishna, Lord Nrsimha has protected me also in that devotional service. And wish you all very well. And I pray that you all receive the blessings of Lord Nrsimha. Hare Krishna.